and out of the bank trying to update 1 million records, and all of a sudden, I see somebody go to the right of the bank in a pickup truck, and 20 minutes later, they drive away and they're done. I'm like, how'd you do that? How did you get your 1 million records in like 15, 20 minutes? I don't know how you did it. It's called the Bulk API. You need to know this. It's a key to the integration. So there are 5 steps to the Bulk API. And you can either insert 1 million records, or you can query 1 million records in a short amount of time. Minutes, maybe an hour. So 5 steps. Step 1, hit a buzzer, open a job, get a ticket. Step 2, upload a CSV. All right, well, I have 5 CSVs, so I upload 2, 3, 4, 5, that's all step 2. And then I ring the buzzer, start processing. Then just like I'm driving with my kids in the car and I'm driving, what do they say to me? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? You tell Salesforce, are we there yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? And eventually it says you're done, and then you download the success or failure. Some of these jobs can take, like I've done quick jobs and they take longer for me to go to check the status. Other ones may take an hour. This is how you move anything more than a few hundred records in and out of Salesforce. If you're not using the Bulk API, you are not doing the right thing. And if you use the data loader, it uses the Bulk API. So the Bulk API is the only way to be moving thousands of records in and out of Salesforce using this 5-step process. You can ingest API. That means Salesforce swallows it and absorbs it. And then you can actually query, and you'll get this crazy thing when you're querying 1 million records called PK chunking, primary key chunking. It's on the test, and they explain it if you're studying for the test. All right. So now we have a variety of REST calls for calling in. I'm outside of Salesforce, I want to call in. So I can start calling in with a REST query. Get me 50 records. Get me this, get me that. Plenty of ways to do that. I can insert. I told you how I can insert up to 200. I can do an insert, I can do an update, I can look up related records. Very powerful. Fast, small, nuclear calls. The composite's really powerful. If I want to insert an account, add the contacts, and add the opportunities, isn't that 3 different inserts, accounts, contacts? What if I could do them all at once? One hit to the API. One API call, they all either succeed or failure, or they go independently. That's the composite API. So it's a very powerful API for doing multiple steps in one call. And you decide whether all or none of them are successful or whether they can individually succeed. People don't know about the composite, they're missing out. It's really, if you're hitting your API call limits, you need to know about the composite, especially if you're doing multiple separate different steps. Composite is a really cool API. GraphQL is the same thing in reverse. Instead of inserts, you can like query 10 different things simultaneously in one call. Little counts, little opportunities, little this, and you send one request in and it sends all of that to you back in one call. The GraphQL is totally cool. You're gonna really like it. And in fact, if you go here to Salesforce API, discover the APIs, and I go in here, I can see all my APIs here, and now they're showing me the model. So this is where you're gonna learn to go and see all of your different APIs in the documentation. Back to here. So GraphQL is really cool. It used to be the headliner, now it's moved down. Tooling API is where you can do developer tools. I can actually create code from outside of Salesforce, push it in, run it, debug it from outside of Salesforce. And I do that not just buying a tool, but actually can do it through my Postman. And if we have time, I'll show you a few examples. The metadata API is where like tools like Apollo that I work for, or Gearset is where we can push in entire deployments, entire schemas through the metadata API. The tooling API is where you can do more individual, trigger test runs, call debug logs, and do all that. Very powerful. The UI API, you can actually run a headless Salesforce, that means no UI, and you can build your own UI and get all those little pick list values. Everything Salesforce has on its UI is made available. It's screen. Really powerful. All right, events, we're gonna go shift into events, different way of looking at things. Instead of a call and a request, reply, this is where I like create this football, and I mean like a soccer ball, for those from the other side of the pond, and I stick some data in it and I kick it. So I throw data in this little bundle, this football, and then I kick it over to the goalie, and the goalie catches it, the event bus catches it, and then they throw it back out, either one or many, to whoever's listening. So this is a disconnected way of doing integrations that's now a very powerful new mechanism called events. And so the streaming API is the old version. That's the beat up, pick a truck in a corner. It still works just fine, but they came up with a fast new version. But the good one has this old thing called push events. Don't use them. They're old. Generic events, never used them. Platform events, great, but you should start looking at the new event bus and CDC, change data capture. So the last two are the ones you should be thinking about. How to tap into platform events and CDC events. So what we do is, these are old schools. Don't learn about the old ones. Platform events, scalable. I can throw an event, goes to on the event bus, it catches it, and then it says, who's interested? It holds on to them for up to 72 hours, and then it feeds them back to whatever clients are interested and give it back to them. It's a very cool mechanism. So if I were doing S objects, I do a DML, direct data manipulation, and I do my insert and update, and then I can query any object. That is how S objects work. What are platform event objects? They are what kind of objects? What's their suffix? E. So instead of S objects, we have E objects. So E objects work a little differently. I publish to a channel. Instead of inserting, I publish. Different concept, publish. I can't query, but I get 3 choices when I want a platform event. I can say, give me option 1, give me the future events. I'm gonna hook up my telephone line and say, tell me new events. That's a -1, or give me the latest. I could hook up and say, hey, the last message I got was number 295. Give me every message after 295. So I can pick up and have immediate disaster recovery. So I could be down for a minute or an hour and immediately catch any message I missed. That's option 2. Or I could say, hey, I've been offline for a while. Give me everything in what's called your retention window. Everything, and in Salesforce, high volume platform events have a 72-hour retention window. So I could be down for the whole weekend, reconnect, and get every single missed message. It's really powerful. This buys you 72-hour recovery with no data loss between 2 systems, all built into Salesforce without you having to write crazy logic. Totally cool. But you can't go beyond 72 hours, data retention window. You can so what happens is, and you can do this in Salesforce. So a flow can publish a platform event, like an insert, and another flow can subscribe to a platform event, like a platform event triggered flow. And so 2 flows can talk to each other without direct communication. They use the platform event as the broker. And I can then have external clients that can insert platform events. I can have external clients that subscribe to platform events, so they could be listening to these. So I can have external actors causing events on the bus, external actors listening. And then if I got a whole other party going on over here, they have their own event bus called Kafka. That's their name of an event bus. And I want to have some messages going back and forth. I get what's called an event bridge. And some events in Salesforce can go to Kafka, and some events from Kafka come back to Salesforce. So this is like the ultimate. Two flows talking to each other, a flow being talked to an external process. I had one where you had operating room tables of one of my clients, and we wanted a dashboard every time an operating room table went down. It was configured in CPQ. We would then have a case, and then we'd want this big dashboard on the screen to then go red and say problem. So this was listening through the streaming API, catch that event and have it go red. And so you could have external clients listening to events, taking actions. So this is publishers, subscribers, platform events. All right, we're cruising. The new fancy thing now is the Pub/Sub API, much more robust, has what's called a schema, higher volumes. The clients can actually throttle. They don't just get hit with a tsunami of events. They can actually pace how they receive events. So the new Pub/Sub API is the cool way to go now. All the cool kids are using it. And so this one is just the new one. It's better scalable, unified error handling, flexible. So if you're just getting started with platform events, take a look at the Pub/Sub API. It's worth the effort. All right, I don't get any commission. I'm just telling you about it. So now you're inside of Salesforce. You want to get out of Salesforce. So a tree falls in Salesforce. How do I tell somebody else? I can have what's called external services. I can create a definition of an external call, and then I can plug it into a flow and it goes off. That was the original way flows could make calls. And now you can add what's called a flow HTTP call. You can grab a little piece of HTML, stick it in Salesforce, it'll look at it, analyze it, and now you can call it your flow. Really cool. So all those flownatics out there, you can make API calls without too much effort. Using the HTTP flow actions. You can go old school, write code. You can do custom code, really complicated schemes, asynchronous, retry. That's for your programmers, but you don't need to. Flownatics can do an HTTP call out. Now, a couple different patterns I'm going to shoot through. So a tree falls. There's a record change. I could have a record trigger flow. I could throw it in this old thing called outbound messages. I could have a record change, record trigger flow, throw to the event bus, and the external system could be subscribing to the event. The advantage of this is they get the choice of the -1, the message, they get the 72-hour recovery, and we don't need to worry about it. We just throw it on the platform event, move on. Or we could have an Apex trigger go to the event bus, same thing, it's just whether I want code or flow. Or their change data capture could listen for every change. You pay for Salesforce. It listens for every change and it sends it out. So you don't have to have flows, triggers. If you add fields, you don't have to do it. It's all out of the box Salesforce with a little money. And it will then tell another system every change you make on an object. And you could even create what's called custom channels and filter the messages. It's really, change data capture is really powerful with a little money. Code, build it or buy it. That's your choice. Okay? You could do a flow using a call out with an HTTP call out action, external service, or even call some Apex. These are all choices depending on how you want your IP, intellectual property, to go out. Salesforce Connect allows you to virtualize data. You're in Salesforce, you want to see data outside of Salesforce. And what kind of objects are those? They're not S objects, not. What kind of objects are these? Yeah, what's their suffix? X objects. So X objects look like Salesforce objects, act like Salesforce objects, but they're always fresh. Every time you touch them, they go to the other system and get their data. You can actually read and write data using X objects. Now you can hit SAP and relational databases and all these really cool things. Salesforce Connect, extremely powerful. So you can have cross-org, org-to-org, OData, SQL, GraphQL, really powerful for virtualizing data. All right, we have a few minutes left. These are all the ways in and out. Now you need a little security, and there are this thing called OAuth, and I'm just gonna give you a little cheese sampler plate. Not enough to pass the identity and access exam, but just enough to know it exists. There are what are called flows, which are dances, and each dance could be used in a different scenario. So, whether you're going single sign-on or a mobile device or a browser, there are dances. You choose your dance. What I'm going to do is give you my beer garden example. I'm going to give you two dances. One dance is I want my beer. But there is a guard called the resource server, and he doesn't take money. So instead, I go to the OAuth server, I present my ID, and I get a wrist bracelet. Anyone go to like a fair where you get a wrist bracelet? And then you go to the beer garden, show your wrist bracelet, get your beer. So you go to the auth server to get your access token, and then you present yourself to the resource server, show your wrist bracelet, and you get your beer and you drink your beer. But what happens when 3 hours goes by and they change wrist bracelet colors? Now my token is expired. They've told me I can only buy beer for 3 hours. So now I have to go back and buy another wrist bracelet. That's how OAuth web username password flow is about. So that's like half the flows, whether it's a JOT token flow, a SAML token, they're all this little dance. Go to the auth server, get a wrist bracelet, go to here. Now I'm going to give you the hardest one there is. And once I explain it, every other one is simpler than this one. And then we're just about done. So I want to go to a burger house and get some beer, but the burger house is going to get the beer on my behalf. This is me like going to Workbench and then having Workbench go to Salesforce. So I go to the burger house. You don't have to memorize this, this is the most complicated and it's understandable. I go to the burger house And it says, I need to get some beer on your behalf. So it does a redirect, and all of a sudden the Salesforce login window pops up. So I put in my user credentials, and then a code, an auth code, comes back up to me. It shoots over to the Burger House, and then the Burger House presents it to the auth server. It presents the code, not my username and password. The Burger House never sees my new username and password, and it gets the auth code for me, the wrist bracelet, and it stores it. And it even gets a special token called a refresh token. So like 2 weeks later, I log in again to the Burger House, it can still get my data. And so now it has what's called a refresh token, an access token, and now Workbench or something else can access data on my behalf with my credentials. And that's it. This is what you get this, you can pass, and you memorize the other variances in between. This is identity and access. This is like half of identity and access. All right. So, ways into Salesforce, ways out of Salesforce, the dance with the client server, who handles the errors, and then when you do security, know your OAuth flows. And this is essentially all the APIs in like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And let's see, and thank you. So I'm gonna show you one thing. So I could be in my little Postman. You all should think about buying Postman, or it's free. I am connecting, so I just got my wrist bracelet. This is what it looks like. And then all I'm gonna do is go query account and hit send. And now I've just queried account level data. And let's say I go ID, name, and what is it, type? Let's see, is type a standard field? There we go. ID, name, type. So I am making queries from outside of Salesforce, querying in. I can get contacts, I can describe objects, I can do GraphQL. All of these are what's called the Postman collection. So you should all have Postman, and you can make your own calls, and there's so much out there. So you can do anything in Salesforce being outside of Salesforce, 99.9. Any action inside Salesforce you can do from outside through your calls. I'll stop here. Any questions? Yes?
Can you talk about any APIs which are going away or being retired that we need to get ourselves away from?
Yes, you should be very aware. So when I hit this API, I'm going to authenticate with my OAuth. So let me just top up that. This is a very important thing to know. So I'm hitting this endpoint, and it's telling me that I can then come to query account. I'm actually going to get rid of my version number here, and it'll make sense in a minute. So I'm going to go hit services data. This will now tell me all the available endpoints. 31 is still available, 32 all the way up to 61. So Salesforce will deprecate these. 31 will be gone probably later this year in months. So I hope none of you wrote an integration 10 years ago, because guess what, when was 31? Like in 2014? Yes, if you wrote an integration, grab the latest version in 2014, then that will break probably at the next Salesforce version. So these will start turning off and disappearing. They try to give you warnings. You should know about this. You got to go find some crazy logs to look into to see. You'll get some emails. Hey, you're an org using an old version that's still active. Be aware, because one day it'll just stop working. And it's up to you, but it's 10 years old. You should at least go in there and fix it. So very important to know. Other questions? Yes, back there.
What API would you use to query the installed packages? Is it the tooling or the metadata?
Probably, I don't know exactly, but I would think like the tooling. You're trying to find the installed packages.
More specifically, only the prefix of the installed package. I don't care about the name, just the prefix.
You know, it might even be in the, I don't know, I'd have to look, but it might be on the S object. So here is, like, I might do the metadata API. Here's like me describing the account object, getting everything. I'd have to look and see if there's one for installed packages. So I would look under the metadata. So right now I'm doing objects describe.
Yeah,
And go.
I've done it in a Workbench, and obviously I can see.
Yes. If you can do it in Workbench, you can do it through Postman.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes.
What's the main difference of monitoring APIs or integrations from PubSub to REST or any of the?
You mean, you asked monetary?
Yeah, how can I monitor?
Monitor.
Yeah, monitor, control.
Not as much. So you can't get like a dashboard of all you got to pull like the event logs. So you'd have to go to like event logging and pull from there. Okay. Other questions? So Mike, when I teach these classes, and there's a lot of material, everything is knowable. There is no rocket science in here. It's just a series of small ideas built to bigger ideas and bigger ideas. The integration architect exam can seem a little more daunting because it's got more Lego building blocks, but ultimately there's nothing in there that's not knowable. It's all knowable if you just look at it and then just start adding the pieces up together. So, and you can whip up an integration with a Flow HTTP callout, set up a named credential, and you could be rocking and rolling.